Great. Well, let's kick it off. Excited to be talking with Michelle Clark, our absolute right hand guru when it comes to all things demand gen and strategy and just marketing in general for B2B tech companies. And then, of course, you got me. I'm the founder of Expert Marketing Advisors, more so behind the scenes, but definitely focused on valuations and some M&A approaches this year, mergers and acquisitions. Great. Michelle, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. So happy to be here. Excited to talk about 2026 B2B marketing strategy with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is really timely. If folks don't already have a strategy in place, or if they do and they just want to make sure they really fine tune it, this is certainly the time to be doing it. So with that, the 2026 B2B marketing reality, what does this landscape even look like? What are some of the changes that have come about? What are we seeing more of or less of, and so on and so forth? Maybe you can walk us through that, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, the first bullet point about buying committees just being larger is certainly true. I think I saw a stat the other day that was something around there are now 13 people involved in a company when it comes to B2B sales, and sort of making that decision. So that's certainly a larger number than I think we've seen historically. Slower and more skeptical, sure. Everybody is kind of waiting, assessing a lot of new technology, kind of makes everybody slow down a little bit and really consider. And then again, when you have 13 people in the room to make a decision, it's naturally going to slow things down.
Yeah.
With AI being everywhere, yes, we're seeing a lot of throw AI at it, just weave it into the copy on our website, say, yes, we do AI. But the strategy is still missing, and a lot of people are forgetting to sort of back up from the tactical and really think about how to apply it.
Right, right. It's one thing to kind of have this high level understanding of AI and how that actually is built into the company's offering and such, but it's another thing to really like leverage it and take it to the actual extent that it was that it's being built for.
Yeah.
Uh, great. And then the channels versus impact, because I've seen this go in different waves over the last 20 plus years of marketing. Um, and it does seem like we're kind of like all kind of peeling back a bit and like going with the more simple and straightforward as opposed to some of the shiny objects.
Yeah, we've had a few conversations with folks who are like, maybe we should do Instagram, maybe we should do TikTok, maybe we should do Reddit, maybe we should do all of it. And it's like, slow down, take a breath. Like, let's not revisit spray and pray that used to be very popular. We've all seen that it doesn't work. And just remember the tried and true, find the right watering holes. Where is your audience actually hanging out? Because just being everywhere is not always going to be as impactful. It's the pretty classic quality over quantity.
Yeah, yeah. And the shiny object syndrome, I mean, that's one I'm like notorious for. I love to like, oh, what's this? And it's like, no, keep that focus. As well, that last point here on tactics, I am a very tactical person. I like things to be very like rigid and like, this is our approach and blah blah blah. But certainly taking to your point, Michelle, bringing that up and like, why are we doing this? What is that going to look like in the long haul? And so on and so forth. So maybe a little bit more clarity as you're kind of pointed out here.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we're all fans of sort of testing things out. I think you don't really know until you test something, but you also
Right,
want to test one thing at a time. And actually, put a lot of thought into whether that test is actually going to be worth it too.
right, right, great. Okay, sorry, my cat has decided to join the webinar. Of course.
What are their thoughts
Um,
on B2B marketing?
I'm trying to like hold her back. I think she just hears us talking and she's like, oh, what's happening? Anyways, B2B marketing strategies that we do see people are getting wrong. Maybe we can kind of tick off a few of those. We
Yeah,
definitely
the
see.
channel first planning, and I think we have a nice graphic on this a little bit later in a few slides. But really, it should be goal first. And then what channels will help you sort of reach those goals, or you think will reach those goals, rather than just saying, let's go with this channel. Why? Oh, I just thought it was a good idea, and hopefully it'll help us reach our goals. It's just a little backwards.
Yeah.
But definitely that.
That's a real important one. We have we're working with one company right now where we are splitting out the different channels, and it's with the intent of kind of figuring out which ones actually are performing and which ones need more attention or perhaps shift our focus to something else. So it's not it's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. it's just that the larger goal is obviously the revenue component, and the, so the collective, and then breaking it from there, if that makes sense, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think then once you figure out the channels, you sort of have to go back to
Right.
the goals for that individual channel. And it can be kind of a back and forth.
Yes.
But always that's okay, what's our bigger goal? And then you narrow down from there.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And then what about these metrics? A lot of folks will refer to them as vanity metrics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, we see a lot of that, and certain metrics matter. Certain metrics are, even if they are vanity, it's interesting, to see what they are and to understand them. But definitely, if you're looking at each channel, it's what metrics actually matter, and we have past webinars on this that I think are really valuable. And then also making sure to, as you're looking at your funnel and you're looking at where you need to fill gaps, also understanding where those metrics would map to your revenue. And so just not
yeah.
only, narrowing down on the metrics that matter, but then understanding how it impacts your business too.
Yeah. And those big metrics, the sort of the levers that really do kind of carry the focus of moving things through pipeline. It's important to understand what those ones are, and then you can really just start sort of pushing or pulling those levers or adjusting them. It's the extra metrics. We can, I mean, data is king, right? We can drill into all sorts of areas. But again, it kind of supports that shiny object syndrome. It tears the focus away from really the big the big milestones and the big metrics that are most important and ultimately for sales.
Yeah, and just to be really concrete, some examples, follower count versus engagement rate, right? Open rate versus click rate.
Right,
Not that any of these are not important, but you have to also understand the bigger picture and how they fit together. So if you're
right,
only looking at email open rates, but you're not looking at who opened the email and then maybe who opened the email and clicked it, that could actually be really valuable rather than just what the open rate is of an email. That's just one
right.
example. And then you can do that for each individual channel.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then once you kind of really iron out which metrics are the ones that matter, which we're happy to help y'all with as well, keeping that focus, staying the course with that, and holding yourself accountable at the end of each month, end of each quarter. What does that look like? How are we able to kind of iron out some of these bottlenecks, or do we see sort of a lower conversion in one area versus the higher conversion in another? The follow through there. Great. And then of course, sales and marketing, right? We all work for sales.
Yeah,
Uh,
this is just the age old, may have the two departments, be working together and collaborating. So make sure that those motions are definitely
yeah.
connected.
And there's a lot of overlap. I think it's even more so now where, our buyers are making decisions before ever talking to sales. They're like 80-90% of the way through the buying cycle, before they even reach out with a contact us or something of that sort. So really working hand in hand, marketing and sales together is going to kind of keep that cohesive, and it's a very fluid sort of motion. Yeah. And then what about AI adoption? What are we seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, I like that it's in quotes here because it's like, yeah, I use AI and it's just, having ChatGPT write your copy or whatever it is. But really
Mm.
understanding, like this bullet point says, the larger operational change. So, what meetings do you have that are pretty regular on the calendar where the entire team is meeting about how your company specifically has, AI adoption in their company? Not just, okay, use AI, bye, but really, having training sessions or working sessions or constantly, updating each other on the new things that you've learned and ways to actually adopt it. What tools? I mean, our company has gone through so many review processes of different tools and comparing them to each other and really seeing what makes sense, but also what makes sense for our agency. And that's going to be really specific per each business. Um,
Yeah. I heard one comment the other day was, the company sort of policy is, um, any task or any need or any function, they first ask, can AI do it? Which is an interesting approach. And if AI can't do it, then they look at like actual human beings, and it's like, oh gosh, that's really like blatant in how, some of the human roles are, t at some point kind of being threatened by AI. But at the other end of that is, if the AI has a purpose, like if we know that we have something specific that needs to be done within the organization or the business, then what does that mean? What do we need? What does that look like?
Mhm.
And I think that's where you actually need that extra bit of thought around the adoption and operational change.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I would say these are a good four ways that, marketing companies go a little bit awry. So addressing those. A big stat.
Big
89%.
number. I always like to throw one out there. Yeah. And you found this one, Michelle. Go for it.
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of like that larger buying committee and understanding, who your audience is. 89% of purchases are now requiring input from more than one department. So it's not just 13 marketers, but maybe it's, five salespeople, five marketers, some people in product, and so on and so forth. And so really what that
Legal,
is.
accounting, legal and
Yeah,
accounting, the
yeah,
table.
absolutely. So really then your ICP has really expanded because now you have to consider what your messaging is to each of those departments because they are
Yeah.
all going to have a different perspective on what you're selling is going to
Yeah.
impact, what's going to impact the
I
business.
mean, legal is going to care about, the contract itself and the is there cancellation terms and yada yada versus, accounting is going to care about like the numbers and the dollars versus product is going to care about, whether or not this is actually going to solve the problem that they're concerned with or, the IT side of things. So yeah, speaking to each one of those is gotten more and more complex, of course. Yeah, 13 different
Folks, yeah.
buying departments. Yeah. Oh, 13 different folks. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
13 different folks across however many departments. I mean, that really puts you to the
Yeah.
test.
Yeah. Kind of building that out. So if you're building that out, the marketing strategy and the framework that we suggest, just kind of again reiterating the business objectives, start there, and then build out across as far as what's needed to get us from those actual goals to actual results.
Yeah.
So maybe you can talk through this one, Michelle.
Yeah, as you mentioned, always start with sort of your larger business objectives, your revenue, market expansion, so on and so forth. And then we can start to go, okay, now who are we targeting? And we've talked about audience here a lot. But I really like this point about, it's not just personas, it's not just the title, but it really is about the jobs that need to be done. So when you're thinking about those 13 people across the different departments, what are their pain points and how are you solving for each of those? Is really, really important more than ever, especially when you're dealing with so many folks. Then the funnel strategy, just really focusing on each part of the funnel and clear ownership. We've seen it before with ourselves, with clients, doing really great top of funnel, doing really great, bottom of funnel, but nobody's really taking ownership of middle of funnel, and there's a big gap
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So really honing in on that, understanding who's owning each part.
Yeah.
Um, and making sure to have a strategy for each part of it.
I think a big key on that one is really the ownership,
Yeah.
uh, because it can get a little disjointed. So just finding the right folks to really execute in each of the different areas, it makes a big difference. And also just going back to the pipelines, what does this look like? Where does this map into your pipeline as far as conversions? Do you see low conversions in one area versus high conversions in another? If you don't have a lot of historical data, I highly recommend you still just throw some spaghetti against the wall and start somewhere with some average sort of numbers and conversions and then going from there at least gives you that foundation.
Yeah. Then you always have it moving forward.
Right.
Totally.
And then channel prioritization, I think we've already kind of touched on this, but really, avoid the spray and pray, avoid the temptation to try to do it all. It's really honing in on the ones that the channels that really matter for your buyers. And then really focusing on bringing those to a higher level or to higher conversions and to delivering results. Once you kind of have that as a foundation, you can pivot over to some other sort of test channels like the Reddits of the world, or I think Thread now is a one coming around the corner. So
Yeah.
all those good ones.
Yeah, we
Um,
usually see this timeline reversed, and that's where we see most of the issues
right.
come into play, where
Yeah.
you got to keep the timeline right, and then again, there's like sort of sometimes you'll take two steps forward and maybe one step back to revisit, and then so on
Right.
and so forth. But this is the general timeline that usually we see the most success with.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. We do often see this reversed, um, which is just, you got to flip it around on its head, so to speak. Cool. So how do we apply this framework now, as in today? What do we do right out of the gates?
I mean, we're big fans of audits. So reviewing, past stuff, current stuff, and how is it mapping to literally that timeline we just showed. If you need to rework things and rework things. Identifying those 1 to 2 gaps that are creating friction is really important because then you can really narrow in on why. And then are those gaps sort of, necessary? Just something need to be removed from the strategy or replaced. Uh,
Right.
Aligning marketing KPIs to sales outcomes always, right? Making sure that the two departments are in sync. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know if you have anything else to add with
I
those.
mean, I was going to say with the gaps piece, an example, using ourselves as an example, doing outbound dial downs and calls, are just like, oh, what a slog.
Mhm.
Um, but it matters. And like identifying that gap, it truly does matter having that fully sort of integrated outreach. And whether it's dialers or SMS or, just cold outbounds, are those gaps? Do you have those gaps? And how do you work on ensuring that you've got, those covered? Yeah, again, an example for ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And then I would also add for the third one, align marketing KPIs to sales outcomes. I always like to plug our funnel calculator on our website.
Mhm.
And then we have, like a spreadsheet version that we're happy to send to anybody, just to make it really a working session. And then you kind of identify, what each step of the funnel, an MQL and SQL and opportunity means for your company. And it's
Right.
just really great, honestly, like get dirty, typing into a
Yeah.
spreadsheet
It
worth it.
gets everyone on the same page. It's not like a one size fits all for, these types of conversions and numbers and goals, but it is definitely like, hey, let's look at this from every direction. Let's look at it from the top down. Let's look at it from the bottom up. Does it pass? I like to say the sniff test.
Mhm.
If your goal is to have, 1,200 opportunities in the year, that's on average 100 opportunities a month. Is that realistic? Like, where were you last year? Did you have, I mean, and you can kind of like your radars will go off and say, wait a minute, if we only had 10 opportunities a month, how are we going to get to 100 a month? Like, we got to start kind of massaging this more and really getting all the stakeholders aligned on it and agree and have them kind of sniff it out, and everybody just really can kind of go in that same direction. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. And I like the point about always revisiting Pat, especially the most recent year, because again, are you really going to scale that much? We love the
Right.
goal. We love, setting a big goal
Yeah.
for yourself, but you also don't want to upset yourself at the end of the year and not reach,
Right.
miss out on other business opportunities. So,
Yeah.
and then the commit to one quarterly strategy reset, at the end, is it all making sense? Do you need to go back through the timeline? Do you need to go back to whatever those 1 to 2 gaps? Have those gaps changed? So really just sitting down with the team a few
Yeah.
times a year to make sure everything is on track.
Yeah, and this really helps ensure that there's no surprises along the way. I mean, at any given point, I can tell exactly where we are in Q1 versus Q2 versus Q3, and it's because I'm constantly like doing that review and knowing the numbers and knowing what we have in flight and what's working and what's not. And so yeah, it's definitely just an accountability piece.
Yeah, I think internally we've been calling it our State of the Unions.
Right, right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a big difference for the overall valuation of the company too, and also credibility with sales. Cool. Well, that's all we have. I think we were pretty close on time. We're trying to keep these nice and short and little nuggets for everyone to digest. We do encourage you put some questions in the chat there. We'll be sure to loop back around with you. Or of course, just reach out to us directly. Contact at expertmarketingadvisors.com. Be happy to talk shop with you. Absolutely love this stuff. It's kind of our passion, so to speak.
Thanks,
And that,
everyone.
thanks.